Okay, we're going to go ahead and get started. I hope everyone can hear me. Good morning, educators. Thank you so much for joining us this morning for our monthly webinar series. It's hard to believe it's April. For the month of April, we've decided to focus on essays, writing samples, and resumes. Our webinar in September on college applications had a high number of attendees, so we wanted to take a deeper dive into the topic of writing as it relates to the post-secondary success of students. Today we have two expert guest speakers, one from Austin Independent School District and another from Austin Community College, both with great experience on this topic and a background in English language arts. They have some great information on writing tips and working with students on producing great essays, and will also highlight some Texas OnCourse resources as well. So thank you all in advance for your interest. We're looking forward to learning and sharing some great information with you this morning. For those of you just joining the webinar, you will receive a link to access the recording, and we will also be posting all of our webinar content on our website, texasoncourse.org. Let's go ahead and get started with some general tips and tools just to make sure you can see everything and participate. We know it's a very busy time of year. We certainly value your time. So we're going to go ahead and get started with a short orientation of Zoom, which is our webinar platform. So this is how you're going to go ahead and test your audio and make sure you can hear everything that's happening. Attendees are muted right now. You can raise your hand and lower your hand, but we will also save time at the end. You can put your questions in a Q&A box, question and answer that looks just like this. And we will make sure we get those answered by the end of the webinar. And then on the top right side of the screen, you can change your screen size to make it larger or smaller. Who we are. So Texas OnCourse is a collaborative effort of UT Austin, Texas Education Agency, the Workforce Commission, and the Higher Education Coordinating Board. And many of you are familiar, but we are a UT Austin-led initiative created at the request of the Texas legislature. And we work in partnership with the governor's Tri-Agency Workforce Initiative. So all of these organizations work together to connect education and industry in Texas. So the users of our tools include middle and high school counselors, teachers, administrators, and community-based organizations that focus on post-secondary success. And we also provide resources for students and their families. So we always kind of review our mission, which is with Texas OnCourse, every high school graduate, no matter where they come from or where they're going, has a plan for what's next. We like to review and share some of our numbers about who is using Texas OnCourse. As many of you know, when we began, over 2,500 counselors and advisors across the state help us build our resources. So this essentially means our resources were created by counselors and advisors for counselors and advisors. So today we have 11,152 educators registered for our resources, almost 2,900 schools, and 926 school districts. So that is over 75% of districts across the state. So we're also seeing an increase in the number of teachers using our resources, as well as middle school educators. So the professional learning we usually talk about and cover in terms of our resources is known as the Academy, and it now has 4 content areas. These include career pathways, financial aid, post-secondary pathways, and specialties. Each content area has learning modules and badges that are gained through the learning process, but it's helpful to know kind of where these major areas of learning within the Academy. So we're going to briefly go over the agenda of our webinar today and then allow for some time for our guest speakers to share their information. We always start with some quick introductions so that you know who is joining us on the webinar. Then Jaslyn Green, our Associate Director of Content and Resources, will highlight some of what we offer through the Academy and through Texas OnCourse on the topics of creating a college essay. And our first guest speaker is Sarah Simmons, College and Career Coordinator from Charles Aikens High School in Austin ISD here in Austin, Texas. She's got some great ideas that they use at her campus. And next we have Allegra Villarreal, Director of Professional Development for Catch the Next at Austin Community College. She's got some great writing activities to spark the creative writing process for essays. And then after that, we'll just briefly provide some time for question and answer for anyone on the call. And then we have a couple of webinars left for this school year, and we'll allow for some time to share that information. So most of you know me, but I'll start with my short intro. My name's Laura Guggen. I'm Senior Partnerships Coordinator here at Texas OnCourse. I have a K-12 counseling and advising background and work closely with our school districts and their implementation of our middle school resources, as well as our fellows and counselors that are using the Academy.
Good morning, my name is Jaslyn Green. I am the Associate Director for Content and Resources on the Texas OnCourse Initiative, background and supporting students at the high school level with college and career access. With the organization with Texas OnCourse, mainly focused on supporting the information and content that we have included in our tools and resources, just making sure it's up to date, accurate, and relevant for your practice.
I'm Allegra Villarreal, and I am the Director of Professional Development for Catch the Next, which is a nonprofit that helps underrepresented students succeed in their first year of community college. I'm also an assistant professor of English at Austin Community College, and I've been teaching for about 10 years.
Good morning. I'm Sarah Simmons, and I am the College and Career Coordinator at Aikens High School here in South Austin. I taught English for about 10 years at the middle school and high school levels and have been doing college access work for the last 10 years.
So good morning again, this is Jaslyn. One of our goals at Texas OnCourse is to ensure that the Academy includes infographics that you as counselors and advisors can download, print, and immediately use them in your advising sessions with students and their families. The resource we would like to highlight today is entitled Essay Writing Tips. So the three most common types of essays high school students will potentially be asked to write are college application essays, scholarship application essays, and also entrance and even placement exam essays. So this infographic highlights a few tips regarding each type of essay. College application essay prompts are really more focused on students telling their story and are often available prior to the academic year the student will begin applying to college. When we look at scholarship application essays, scholarship programs often ask students to write an essay. The essays allow that scholarship committee to get a better sense of who the student is, and also knowing that there are other elements apart from the essay with the scholarship application. Students will also be asked to provide information about their goals, financial needs, achievements, and more. And then lastly, we have those entrance exam essays that are often used to show how effectively students can read and comprehend a passage and also write an essay that analyzes the information they read. For both SAT and ACT, it includes like an optional essay as well as the writing test. Although it's optional, there are a number of colleges that may require students to take the optional essay. So students can prepare for writing the essays by visiting both College Board and ACT's website to view the additional tips as well as sample essays. We also thought that it would be helpful to briefly review the current essay prompts for both the Apply Texas and Common Application System and just discuss a few writing tips with those as well. So beginning with Apply Texas, there are 3 topics. The first topic, A, is focused on the students being able to describe the environment in which they were raised. Topic B allows a student to share information that really makes them unique. So what are their interests and talents that they have that truly just shape their identity? And topic C allows students to give a reader a real glimpse of their imaginative possibilities. So students often do so by describing some of their long-term goals for both their career and also their life, or even proving that they are thoughtful individuals who are excited about and actively engaged in the world around them. And if we look ahead at the 2021 academic school year, Applied Texas will update topic A slightly so that it allows students to tell their story, really more focused now on some unique opportunities and also challenges that they will face. Topic B will not actually change for the next academic year, as well as topic C. Topic C will also remain the same for the next academic school year. So the common application includes a required personal essay where students are asked to select one of 7 available prompts. Some colleges may require students to complete a few additional essays. So the first prompt is similar to Applied Texas topic B. It asks students to share information that makes them unique. So what are their interests and talents? What are other things about their background that help shape their identity? If we go to prompt 2, it's focused more on students sharing their experience as they have faced any challenges, setbacks, and even failures. And then prompt 3 allows students to write about anything that they've really had an open opinion and truly questioned. So that gives them student an opportunity to really talk through their values and things that they really are determined to fight for. The fourth prompt asks students to describe a problem that they've solved or one that they would like to solve. If we look ahead at the 5th prompt, it allows students to share events or accomplishments that really just allow them to grow personally. The 6th prompt allows students to share what they are just genuinely passionate about or even obsessed over. And then the last prompt is prompt 7. This one is nice because it leaves the choice of topic entirely up to the student. So it's important to caution students that even though the prompt states that the essay can be one that they've already written, they should try to avoid submitting a previously written essay whenever possible. And this is just truly because it may be a good essay for school, but not necessarily good for college admissions essay, as writing for school is truly different from marketing themselves to admission representatives. And then if we look at the previous academic years, Essay 7 was the most popular out of the essays, followed by Essay 5, which was focused on personal growth, and then Essay 2, which focused on challenges and setbacks. So here are a few additional tips that could help students when they're creating those admissions essays. The first is they should think about it and really pose a question that the reader wants to answer. So students don't literally have to include a question in their essay, but they should keep the reader really wondering, how is it going to turn out? What is it meant by something that they shared, and etc. The next tip: don't focus exclusively on the past. Admission reps are looking for essays where students highlight their growth and introspection, so that their essay should be focused on them learning and also growing as a person. The next tip: open up. When students recount an experience, they should include how it made them feel, how it's changed the way they're thinking. Readers connect more when a vulnerability is revealed in comparison to a list of strengths. The next tip is focused on experiment with the unexpected. So whenever it makes sense, students should consider giving a story with a twist or revealing something unexpected, just keeping those readers engaged. And then the last tip is really just don't summarize. So students should definitely avoid explicitly stating the point of their essay, as it takes readers really out of the moment. So students should allow readers to read between the lines and interpret the meaning of a student's story on their own time. And then the last thing, we would like to highlight a few additional resources from College Board as well as Khan Academy that we encourage you to share with students and families in your advising sessions. So the College Board, through their Big Future website, offers several resources to aid students with building out their college essays. Their website provides a few tips. It has feedback from other students on how they approach their essays, as well as several sample college application essays and so much more. So we definitely encourage you to include this in some of your advising sessions with students and families. And then the Khan Academy also provides resources for college admissions essays. Their site really walks students through the essay from brainstorming to completion. It also includes several student sample essays, but the nice part about this one is it even provides feedback from admission reps. So students get a better sense of how an admission rep responded to a particular sample essay. So we definitely encourage you again to use this or introduce this resource to your students in your advising sessions. And then, as most of you are aware, in each of our modules in the Academy, we've generated a number of resources, including infographics and handouts that you can print, hang up in your office, or hand out to students. You can find these resources throughout each module, but we also have the resources from the modules we're discussing today available to download on our Pinterest. Here's a snapshot of the Pinterest boards for our Applied Texas and Scholarship Applications module. So you can access these boards by visiting pinterest.com/TexasOnCourse. And now I'll turn it over to Sarah from Aikens High School and Austin ISD to share a few additional best practices for writing essays. Sarah?
Thank you very much, Jaslyn. Those were really great tips, and I really encourage everyone to refer back to the Texas OnCourse online resources. You know, I think that they have really great handouts, super user-friendly, just right there at your fingertips. You know, so when we talk about the college essay, I think for students, this is such a high-pressure piece of writing, and there's a lot of anxiety that goes along with this. But I can't stress enough the importance of the essay portion of a college application. And, you know, I want everybody to take away from today that, you know, this essay can really be a pivoting point for admissions because just to give you an example, I had you know, every year I'll have at least one student, but one that stands out in my mind a few years back in 2013, one of my students who did not meet any of the automatic admissions for one of the flagship universities here in Texas, wrote an essay, and the admissions rep called me and said, listen, if this is true, what's in this essay, and I need you to help confirm this, like, we want this student at our university, because even though they don't meet any of the admissions, automatic admissions requirements, I'm going to go to bat and say, you know, this shows determination, grit, hopefulness, compassion, all of those things that we look for at our university. So, you know, I try to instill that in my students when we're talking about the college essay. I know it's stressful, but it's really important that you take advantage of this opportunity. Having said that, this essay, and having been an English teacher, you know, I had to learn, like, that we're coming from two different angles when we talk about this type of writing. It's not an essay for an English class. Admissions reps will tell you over and over again that their focus is more on content and less on those mechanics and grammar. Although those things are important, that's not really what this is intended to be. They're not trying to figure out a student's academic progress from this essay. The tone should be more like an interview, you know, and I'm sure that everybody always gets asked the same questions. Well, how long does it have to be? So I always tell the students, you know, no less than 1 page, but you don't want it to be more than 2 pages typically. And, you know, really see this as your opportunity as the student to stand out from the crowd. You know, sometimes when, you know, admissions reps are going through applications, you know, they're seeing the same things in black and white for the, like, 80% of the application. It's, you know, GPA, it's test scores, you know, extracurriculars, and what makes someone memorable is their essay. And so even if a college makes the essay an option I tell students that is not an option. That is your first way to be weeded out of the application process. You know, if you don't take the initiative to present yourself and make yourself stand out from the crowd, like you've just easily been removed from the process. So, you know, take this opportunity to really try to stand out in an admissions person's mind. And some easy tips just to keep in mind is that simple things like knowing your audience. And so when I say that, I'm talking about every essay should be crafted specifically for the college it's intended for. There should be something mentioned in every essay about the school that they're applying to, or the scholarship that they're applying to, or the major or program. There needs to be a reference there. And so, you know, if you need to change that wording per essay, just pay attention to that. Also, the students need to be authentic. This is where, again, like Jaslyn was saying, the students need to show some vulnerability here. You know, the student needs to, and this is where I think our students struggle sometimes in high school. So much of their writing, you know, is being, I don't want to say formulaic, but, you know, it's meant for a different purpose. And I like that this is a narrative that they're writing, but it's, you know, as Allegra said yesterday when we were talking, it's a writing with a purpose. They need to be vulnerable at some point and try to share a little bit about themselves to connect with the reader. And specificity is always going to make this writing stronger. So are they including details that, again, reflect some knowledge of the school, the program, the scholarship, the major? I always tell students, before you start writing, you need to Google. Go get on the internet, look up the school, and let's go look at the school's values, their mission statements. What are their recent success stories that they're publishing on their, you know, the front page of their website? You know, what are they proud of? And let's try to reflect some of that in your writing, either in your own values, your own hopeful successes, that sort of thing. And then again, this is all to try to answer that question, like, why is this program or school in particular a good fit for you? Like, why do you see yourself there? Or why would you be a good representative for this scholarship? So I want to apologize because I realize this slide is probably a little scary. It is flu season, but I tell my students that the college essay is kind of like sneezing in public. You know, I have a sneeze that tends to be memorable. And so sometimes I get embarrassed. I make this comparison that, you know, it kind of starts off feeling all awkward and weird in your head, and you're like, oh man, what are people going to think? You're kind of nervous how this is going to go. But I tell students, you know what, don't sit here and keep it all in your head, what you're trying to think about for this essay. Just go ahead and get it out. Throw out whatever is in your head in your first draft. And then I promise you, I'll be your tissue and I'm going to help you clean this up. And so, you know, there's some ways that we can help them clean up these essays. And I also want to just encourage everyone here that you don't want to be a tissue. Don't be the whole box, you know, you want this to sound authentic, like it is the student. So let them take a risk, you know, let them try to put themselves out there on the paper, because again, that's what the colleges are looking for. They're really trying to get to know the student better. So encourage them to take risks on things like, you know, maybe if they are coming from a background where they have had some personal struggles, maybe choose one instance where, you know, a struggle was a very big part of their lives and they learned how to navigate it, how they came through the other side of it, and, you know, how that helped them change and grow as a person. And I tell students, like, this is your one chance. Imagine if you were sitting down at a table for an interview for, you know, this college, explain to them, you know, like, this is why I know I'm going to be successful, is because I have experienced this and I've come out, you know, changed in this way. And I also talked to them about, you know, risk versus reward. We are talking about high school students. And so sometimes, you know, when they take a risk, they might need some redirecting. Humor is really hard to pull off. I do have students that think they're hilarious. And after I've known them for 2 years, I think they're funny as well. But I tell them, this person doesn't get that kind of time to build context with you. So humor is something I tell them to try to avoid. It's okay to be lighthearted, but, you know, putting in your own personal cynicism or, you know, own personal witticisms, I would avoid. Talking directly to your reader can also be challenging, because that can oftentimes feel either condescending or it's a little bit more aggressive. And so I would, you know, challenge students to maybe revisit a way to do that. Humility is always best in any way, shape, or form. Talking about how you connect with someone's humanity is something that I think every college is looking for. So that's definitely a plus. And then, of course, always I tell them, remember the 3 R's. You're definitely going to have to revise this essay. So even, you know, your best writer who thinks they can just sit down and do this one time, that is not how your best writing is going to be reflected, of course. They need to, once they write it, they need to walk away from it for, you know, a week and come back to it and see if, you know, they feel like it really reflects them. And then I think that Jaslyn had said it before, you know, with reviewing, a really good person to have review your college essay is your actual college admissions representative. And I haven't met a single rep that isn't very happy to do this. They tell students, yeah, you can send me your essay. I'll tell you what I think about it, give you some suggestions. And I think that is a really great option for students, because they, you know, their English teacher, well, in their minds, what do they know about college, right? And then you have your college access advisor, and, well, what does she know? Because she doesn't really know you. But if you get a third party like the college rep in there, who is in their mind, you know, the legit expert, they will take anything they say to heart. So I encourage you to reach out to your college reps. And, you know, you can do a college application essay, like little boot camp. They'll love to come in and help with those essays. Just real quick, if anyone is working with students on resumes right now, you know, I think it's harder clearly for high school students when they start working on their first resume, because they don't have much experience. And depending on if that resume is academic, rather, you know, versus like a job resume, your focus could be a little bit different. But there are some just really basic good tips to give students. And again, you know, there are a lot of great online resources for this. And if anyone, you know, uses Naviance or any other, you know, resource, there's a lot of things that will format a resume for a student quite easily. But just keep the design simple and clean. Of course, limit it to just 1 page. And the 4 basic sections that it should have are, you know, a clear section for contact info, I always tell students a good cell phone number, because those change all the time, and a very professional, personal email. Don't use your school email, because, you know, once you graduate from high school, you're not going to have access to that sort of thing. And then have, you know, the education section where they will be able to talk about, you know, what schools they've attended so far and their possible intended college. And then probably the biggest section will be their experiences section. And that can include everything from employment to volunteering, internships, practicums, anything like that. And then, of course, highlights. But, you know, keep the highlights to the last 4 years of high school. Don't try to go all the way back to the 6th or 5th grade when you had perfect attendance then. And just in general, with any resume, action verbs are always better than those passive being verbs. So instead of saying, you know, I was a member of, the student council, have them switch gears to, you know, what did you actually do in the student council? And if that was that you, led discussions or formulated a plan for whatever, you know, try to use those action verbs to describe your activities. And, I always like to throw in there, adjust for intent. If this resume should include a cover letter, again, there's a lot of great online resources for that. And I've only had that a few times with students, but, a cover letter can be a really powerful piece to add to that resume if they're applying to like a scholarship or, again, a job. So I just wanted to tell everybody that, hang in there. It's that time of year, and I know that it's busy, but everybody's going to get there to the end. And just breathe deep. If you took time out of your day to do this, I really applaud you. I'm sure that your students are at the center of your heart. So thank you for all of your great work. And I will throw it over to Allegra.
Hi there. Yes, I'm happy to be here with all of you today. I apologize, I just had to move venues very quickly because of some ambient noise here at Austin Community College. So I'm presenting a little bit about crafting persuasive personal statements. This is basically a truncated version of a workshop that I typically do with students because they struggle with both the form and the content of this particular essay. And so we spend a lot of time in the generative process of trying to get them to come up with good options because, as has been said already by both Jaslyn and Sarah, there are many different prompts and there's lots of different ways to respond to them. And so it's good if they have a lot of ideas moving forward. So what is it that makes the form so challenging? I think the first thing is that it's shorter than a typical essay that students write. It's 400 to 600 words usually, so that's one challenge. As Sarah pointed out, it's not the essay that students are typically called on to write. They usually write analytical essays to demonstrate their mastery of a subject, but in this case, it's all about them. So that can be uncomfortable, especially if it's been a while since they've done the narrative form. So as I try to demonstrate to them, it's a narrative. You're still telling your story, but you have a really clear purpose here. It's not just about sharing something from your life, but it's about going one step further and to persuade or argue for admission to a university. So we know the basics of good persuasion. There's our three persuasive modes. So the first is pathos, and this is where you're going to tell that story to forge an emotional connection with your audience. This is where we talk a little bit about, again, as Jaslyn and Sarah have said, about being vulnerable in key moments in that narrative storytelling. So trying to be as honest as you can and trying to strike that balance between being proud of your accomplishments, but also staying humble at the same time. And that's a really difficult line to walk for anybody. Ethos, of course, is establishing credibility. So the writing has to be, you obviously want to avoid grammatical and mechanical mistakes and things like that, because that's one part of credibility, that you've clearly worked on this piece, that you've polished it, that it's the best that you can present of yourself. But also, again, as Sarah said, knowing your audience, knowing the college that you're applying to, the program that you're applying to, and why you're compelled to do so, and demonstrating that as well in the essay. Finally, logos. So obviously, as Jaslyn said, we're trying to get students essentially to market themselves. That's the key. So we need to establish why the university should invest its resources or offer an opportunity to this particular student. And so we need to establish that the student is someone who sets a goal and accomplishes it by any means necessary. And there might be challenges along the way, and that's fine, but that somehow those challenges are overcome. And obviously with logos or logic, a pattern of reasoning, you need to have evidence. So the evidence in this case, I tell my students, is your GPA, extracurricular activities that you've done, an employment history if you have one, the recommendation letters, things like that. So trying to weave it. So again, if we come back to the challenge of the form, if it's 400 to 600 words, this is a lot to accomplish in 400 to 600 words. But that's the task that lays before us. So one of the pre-writing activities that I like to do with students, again, staying in that generative space, because it's one thing to tell students, you know, go write this essay and here, and good luck to you, and I'll help you revise, which of course I do. But I really find they get stuck in the idea stage, again, because they don't really know what's expected, or even if they know what's expected, they don't know how to start. So there's nothing more intimidating than looking at a blank page. So I usually sit students in pairs, and we do this activity called The Bridge. And this is adapted from a really great book called Write Out Loud by Carol Barash, which I highly recommend. For me, as a community college instructor, I'm dealing with students who are trying to transfer mostly. And so it didn't have as much information for me as I would have liked, but I think for students who are juniors or seniors in high school, it's a really wonderful resource. And it's essentially a workbook that takes you through a lot of different activities like this. So in any case, this one is called The Bridge. And we start with the question, what is the most important thing colleges need to know about you? So I have students fold this paper in half along the line. And we start on the right-hand column because that's really easy. Usually that's the easy conversation to begin with. So we ask, you know, what activities do you enjoy? And they'll say everything from, you know, music to gaming to dance to running, hiking, sports, things like that. Then the attributes, what words would you use to describe yourself? And influences. What people have shaped your life, some people you've known personally. But I'm kind of more interested in the second question, which is what works of art, literature, or science have shaped you or inspired you? Because that's more about their intellectual history, which I think is also something that colleges like to know about. And then we go to the left-hand side. After they've kind of gotten warmed up on the right-hand side, we do the left-hand side, which is a little bit more abstract. So this is, you know, what differences do you want to make in the world? What are the commitments you want to make moving forward? What are your ambitions? What do you plan to study? What else do you plan to do in college in addition to pursuing your major? And what are your plans after college? And then aspirations. So this is the hardest question. I think we're all trying to understand this one. But what is the purpose of your life? What is the essential kernel? And this is something that you have to talk students through, obviously. What you can see here is an example of a student who filled one out. So the activities were helping people in mentoring, volunteering, teaching, journaling, and dancing. Attributes, passionate, empathetic, tenacious. Influences were some friends and mentors, Patty, Jesse, Janice. Also God, so faith important to the student. And then in terms of works of art or literature, she said music, all of it. Because I had prompted her what kind of music, all of it. And then commitments to be self-actualized, to be a better person. This again is where the facilitator or the instructor or the advisor can help get them the vocabulary that they need. Because the student didn't say self-actualization, but said, you know, I want to be the best version of myself I can be. So also wanted to stop racism and that type of thing. So yeah, so those are sort of some of the things that student came up with. One other place to take the bridge, and you can do it in a number of different ways. So once you have the two sides, you try to link the left side and the right side together so that you come up with coherent stories and narratives. Then because students are working in pairs, they talk those narratives through and then they write them down. So once they've had the experience of talking, adjusting their story for a particular audience, they can then set about to write it and figure out what details are important, what aren't, and then we go through the revision process. Taking that same bridge, if you look at attributes, I'm empathetic, I'm tenacious, I'm kind. One thing is to take one and think of 5 or 10 moments where you demonstrated that quality of empathy or tenacity or kindness, and to move forward going that way. If you come back and you look at the prompts that we began the webinar with, the first one was about topic A for Apply Texas is about the home environment. Topic B is about interest and talents, and topic C rather is imaginative possibilities. So it's really past, present, future. So that's also what we're trying to kind of link in this coherent narrative of a student's life that's meant to persuade college admissions to accept them into the institution. So again, once they have started to get some ideas down, they've written something, they've done some free writing about it. We try to then structure it into something that's, again, it's hard to lay one's life upon a narrative arc, but that's essentially the goal here. So I give students a really basic structure that begins with a magnet, so the story of a defining moment in your life, and however you want to focus that. If you want to focus that on the history of your passion or your major or why you're interested in that field, a mentor who changed some aspect of your life, again, your intellectual inspirations, wherever you want to hang your hat, that's where we begin with the magnet. Then we have a pivot. So how does this then connect to other aspects of your life? So your future career, what your ambitions are, your goals are, those bigger, sort of more abstract ideas that you hold for yourself. And then finally, you want to leave your narrative with one final image of some sort, and that's what we call glow. In terms of community college students, they have a kind of a secondary task, which is to talk a little bit about the journey of why they started in community college and how that's helped them achieve their goals and what they hope to do once they transfer. For high school students, I guess it's similar in terms of what they've done in the last couple of years of high school and how that kind of attaches to their future goals. So. And additionally, again, because I'm a community college instructor, I work primarily with students who are seeking to transfer. And so they also have, again, their topics tend to be more limited also. I think it's topic A and E are the two that they're required to answer. So they're usually required to answer certain topics. They don't have a choice. So the other thing they have to address, of course, is, why this particular college? What does it offer you? What can you offer it? Again, kind of an overview of their academic journey so far. How the community college has helped them get to the point of transfer, to clarify goals, to figure out majors, that kind of a thing. And then whatever their future career study goals are in concrete terms. And I also tell them that, they want to think about ways that they want to give back in the future. How do you want to return to your community? How do you, so tying it to those bigger goals of altruism and kind of paying it forward, because colleges also like to know about that.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Allegra and Sarah, for such great information and writing prompts, strategies. Jaslyn also covered some really great resources. Just because we wanted to provide some time for questions, just a couple of things to recapture on what our guest speakers and we talked about and covered from Texas OnCourse. Things that you can do district and campus. And when I say that, I mean high school. We have a lot of high schools that are now dual credit early college high schools. So a lot of them are taking those English courses that you talked about, Allegra. A lot of them are taking those in high school, as juniors and seniors or even earlier. So a couple of things that I think are worth mentioning, workshop essays and prompts with staff. So someone, in either Sarah's position or anyone doing advising on any level for post-secondary success, bringing these essays and prompts up with department chairs and talking about this kind of thing in your core content areas, sharing these updates with core teachers. They're often very sort of entrenched in their core content area, and they really find it valuable to get, if they're working with juniors and seniors, I find that they really appreciate getting the essay prompts that Jaslyn covered and we've all talked about so that they know what kind of writing their students should be doing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be just in English. We have some students that are going into STEM careers, science, technology, engineering, and math. And I've found in the past that even, having their physics teacher read their essay about wanting to be a physicist can be really, really valuable when it comes to that, those 3 R's Sarah talked about, in that review process. And also providing your staff with some framework for revisions and editing, some suggestions. The Common Application provides educator access for review and ways to upload recommendation letters and things like that, but also providing some systematic opportunity for peer editing and also doing that within the core content areas are just some different ways that you can do all of these fantastic things that our guest speakers have talked about. So with that being said, let's go ahead and open it up to questions. You can type your question in the chat box or the Q&A box and we'll discuss it. We have Rose Fretza, our communications coordinator, or Jaslyn. Rose, if you want to take a look and read any of the questions that we have, this is time for attendees to go ahead and ask.
So we do have a question from Stacy asking, will we have access to the writing organizer for essays?
Can you say that one more time, Rose, the question? The writing organizer?
Yes, will we have access to the writing organizer for essays?
Laura, that's the organizer that Allegra shared in her slides. So Allegra, if that's something that you could share as a Word doc or PDF, then we could definitely send it out to everyone registered.
Absolutely. It's also part of a bigger packet that I share with students with a lot of different sample essays and things like that. So yeah, I can share that packet with you, no problem.
Great, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, and we often, we'll do a follow-up email for everyone who's on the call or registered, and we'll have those resources in that email. So while we're waiting for questions, I will put up the next couple webinars we have. May 7th, we're going to talk about college readiness and the TSIA exam. And then in June, we'll have a webinar on advising students with unique needs and circumstances. And then we're in the process now of taking a look at our webinar topics for the 2019-2020 school year. I would say also be on the lookout for any surveys or feedback we have about what those topics are, and we'll have that schedule before the school year starts. Also, for those of you who might not be totally keyed into Texas OnCourse, definitely subscribe to our newsletter. That link is right here. We have a couple of different resources. The playbook includes resources to support college and career teaching and advising. And then our news and updates will cover monthly news from Texas OnCourse, including any events that we're having, campaigns, things that are going out throughout the year here at our organization. And then we also post a lot of this information on social media. So please follow us on Twitter and Facebook. And even though you'll get the link to this webinar, you can check us out on our YouTube channel and see a lot of our videos and resources that we have for educators. So we can stay on the line for a couple of minutes, but I do want to just quickly tell everyone, Jaslyn, thank you for the great content. Sarah for joining us from Aikens High School, and Allegra from Austin Community College. We really appreciate such valuable information. And thank you to everyone who attended. If you have any other questions, feel free to ask. Great. I see one comment from Carrie. Thank you to Allegra for sharing the resource packet. Absolutely, we will send that out to everyone. Well, I think we have all of our questions answered, and we have finished just about 10 minutes early. So thank you everyone for joining us. Have a great rest of your day and have a great rest of the week. Thank you all so much. Bye-bye.